Hey, hey, hey. Happy Wednesday. Come on in. Pull up a chair. Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you this week by Dark Star Adventures and their Cult of the Cave Crickets Kickstarter. It's almost a tongue twister there, right? In the hollow depths beneath the earth, where light is forgotten and sanity wavers, lies a terror beyond mortal comprehension. Cult of the Cave Crickets invites you to descend into a labyrinth of darkness where mutated insects skitter and fungal abominations writhe. Unravel the mystery of a fallen star in a missing research expedition over 2 to 3 sessions of intense gameplay. This is not a mere adventure. It is a journey into madness, a confrontation with the unknowable, and a test of your very sanity. Dare you enter the subterranean abyss and confront the cults of the cave crickets? What's included in this adventure are 17 locations across 3 distinct areas, 10 brand new enemies, 5 unique magical items, a host of deadly traps and environmental hazards, a variety of ways to kick off the adventure, as well as multiple endings, from minimally to highly disruptive to the surrounding world. This Kickstarter project for Cult of the Cave Crickets is well past the 400% funding mark, and you can reserve a copy of the 30-ish page softcover with PDF for a pledge of $15. You can grab just the PDF for a $7 pledge. Of course, this is through July 31st. Expected delivery on the PDF is actually going to be within the first couple of weeks of August, while the physical books are slated to arrive in September. Yes. The Cult of the Cave Crickets. I gotta say, this looks really cool. And I love the interior artwork. This is so well done. Very, very nice. And if we keep our fingers crossed, possibly we'll get a chance to take a peek at the finished product. And of course, the dispatch is also brought to you by the GamingGang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. That's right. Yes. So if you're not overly familiar with this show, let me point out, super casual. We just hang out talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news, and then I will normally pontificate about some topic related to our hobby, which will be the case tonight. In fact, I will be talking about why the sudden new wave of hatred towards old Dungeons and Dragons and its creators. And what's driving that? We will discuss. Yes. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Lastly, this is a live show. So that means there is chat available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. You also must be a subscriber for at least an hour before you take part in chat. Yet another way that I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you want to say howdy, maybe get a question, a comment, by all means, chime in and I will do my best to respond. First out the gate tonight is our good friend of the show, the Madman. That's right, the Madman's with us, as is Roger Perdome, Kathy Evans, Semper Buffo, Kevin King, Jose Fernandez, Seesum. I believe this is first time visit. Welcome aboard, James Eck, Chuck Terrell, Jody Connor, W. Forge, Flaming Huron, another of our chat moderators. Yes. Vaughn Moore, John Mascola, and Sly Blue Demon rounding out the opening wave of chatters tonight. And I will also take a guess. The lovely and talented Miss Sarah D might be lurking in the shadows. Yes, our third of three chat moderators. So we are well guarded as far as jackasses. I mean, prevention of jackasses, not, that we're all jackasses. Yeah, Semper Buffo wants to make sure everybody knows there's 47 hours left for the Kickstarter Planet of the Apes RPG. Yes, I shared a news piece. Looked kind of interesting. We'll see. We'll find out. Doomed Colonist and DM Tales are joining us tonight also. So chat is off and running. So let's jump on into the news, because I've got quite a bit of it tonight. Arriving in November from Osprey Games is Battalion, War of the Ancients. And here's the latest. Assemble your armies and maintain order in this dynamic tile-based wargame, inspired by epic battles from ancient history. Take charge of the formidable Roman legions and their allies. Command the powerful crossbowmen of the Han Dynasty as they traverse unfamiliar deserts. Steer the renowned Greco-Bactrian cavalry and fight for every oasis. Direct Hannibal's diverse array of mercenaries, elephants, and the sacred band of Carthage. To lead is to walk the tightrope. Choose a faction, consider its ranks, assemble them into units, and as they fight, carefully balance their orders and sustain your forces in the field. The unique traits of each rank tile will make your units stronger, but combine too many, and your units will become unwieldy. Battalion War of the Ancients is an accessible 2 or 4 player game. Command a wide range of units from 4 playable historical factions, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. Employ faction-specific tactics cards to outmaneuver your opponents. Compose your unique forces with rigor. Judge the tempo of battle with precision. Seize victory for your people. Battalion War of the Ancients is for, once again, 2 or 4 players, ages 12 and up, plays in around 20 to 45 minutes. It's going to carry an MSRP of $65 when it lands late this year. I believe the official release date is November 19th. And I may actually have an opportunity to chat with Osprey Games at Gen Con this year. So we will find out a bit more of the Undaunted, 2200, something like that. This is the science fiction Undaunted that's coming out. Plus, there's a few other games that are on the horizon, board games, which are on the horizon from Osprey Games, as well as role-playing games. Gleeman RX, Coco B, Pete Drakulich, and Matt Rost are joining us. This might be a first-time visit for Matt, live in chat. Welcome. Let's move on to our next news piece, because now available in print is RuneScape Kingdoms, the role-playing game. And here's the lowdown from Steamforged Games. The legendary MMORPG comes to your tabletop. With this fully illustrated role-playing core book, you can bring iconic RuneScape and old-school RuneScape quests and lore to life in a whole new way. For over 20 years, millions of gamers have explored, crafted, and dueled their way across Galenor. I've never played it. I'm hoping that's close to the pronunciation. Galenor? I'm going to say Gielinor? It's Gielinor. Now you can bring the thrill of iconic RuneScape quests to your table, featuring a specially crafted system that captures the essence of RuneScape and an in-depth guide to the world of Gielinor. This complete core book has everything a budding scaper needs to run authentic RuneScape role-playing campaigns. Whether you're a seasoned game master or just dipping your toes into the world of role-playing, this book has you covered. With full character creation rules, an extensive crafting system, iconic weapons and spells, and a bestiary teeming with monsters and bosses you'll learn to love and hate all over again. Plus tips and tricks for game masters. All of Gielinor is yours to encounter. This fully illustrated hardback book contains everything a potential RuneScape noob needs to get started, and that would be me right here. Absolute noob. A comprehensive guide to Gielinor, filled with classic RuneScape locations and lore is included, plus everything you need to play. All in one book. A lifetime of adventure at your fingertips. Full character generation rules. Build your new hero exactly as you want them. The complete core rules. An elegant 3D 6 system crafted to capture the essence of RuneScape. Easy to learn for players and GMs alike. There's magic, prayer, and summoning. A full guide to the mighty forces you can unleash on your enemies. There's crafting and equipment, fishing, mining, smithing. It's all there. Game Master advice, an array of tips and tricks for running games that feel like RuneScape brought to life. Plus, there is that extensive bestiary with iconic characters, NPCs, and bosses. There's over 200 pages of RuneScape role-playing content for infinite hours of play. So don your favorite cape, check your inventory's got enough space for loot, and get ready to max out your legend. The 217-page hardcover with PDF carries an MSRP of $44.99. Right now, you can grab just the PDF alone over at Drive-Thru RPG for $19.99. And yes, if you were watching last night, you know I just received a review copy from Steamforged Games, who I will be talking with at Gen Con. So look forward to that. I am probably going to do a first look video. Excuse me, because I've actually got enough stuff. I could conceivably put together kind of a Steamforged week. When we're done with the news, I will show you something else that arrived, which I had mentioned yesterday, but I also had mentioned I hadn't made my way downstairs into the duct tape studios with it because I could only carry so much. Yes. I got to say, this does look impressive, at least as far as artwork and layout. Got quite a few more people popping into chat. Let's see. We have got Kevin R. Smith, Kabuki Kid, yes, Double K's in the house. Lord Koss 2000, Geo Rock 1, Chris Lundgren is joining us too, as is Dangar the Mighty. And I think I have said hello to everybody. Fingers crossed. You know me, I always do my best to try to make sure I say howdy to all. On the next news piece, following a successful adventure double feature Kickstarter, the Merry Mushmen are taking pre-orders for Waiting the Obsidian Keep. And here's the skinny on the tail. A new expanded OSRized printified edition of Joseph R. Lewis's The Obsidian Keep, which was rated among the best by Bryce Lynch of 10 Foot Pole. Okay, before we move into this news piece, I must say, and I like Bryce's reviews, I actually do. And I think he is probably one of the toughest critics of role-playing game adventures out there, especially OSR books. But, and I don't know him, never met him, I have no idea. But I find it strangely hypocritical for someone to critique others for their layouts of their adventures and usability by someone who can't even be bothered to spell check or check grammar or anything like that. It's sort of like, you got to be a special kind of asshole to like rip on other people. And it's like, okay. But once again, I like his stuff. I like his reviews, but there's sometimes I'll be reading something. I'll be like, wow, that sentence just doesn't make any sense, because I don't know if he does it by just, talk to text or something and doesn't look at it. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to this, because if you've read Nightmare Over Ragged Hollow and think you know Joseph R. Lewis's adventure style, you may have to reconsider. Raiding the Obsidian Keep is a full-on dark fantasy romp across a war-torn seascape in search of a cursed fortress. Sailing to Isla Rakia any old day would be a risky proposition. After all, there has to be a reason why the Archbishop of Radiant Vitila has declared the Duke and Duchess ruling the island sorcerers and heretics. But traveling just after Radiant Vitila sent a fleet to overthrow the lords of Isla Rakia, probably not a good idea. Whatever dark magics were unleashed during the assault left chaotic scars across the island and changed its inhabitants. Only good news is so much chaos should make it easier to get in. What hides within the Obsidian Keep's lightning-stricken walls, however, may make the most hardened of adventurers flee for their lives. To reach the keep, your adventurers will point crawl their way across the Harbor of Death, 10 locations, and Survivor Beach, 13 locations, gathering information about what happened and clues to help them once inside. The keep's grounds, 13 locations, will give them one last chance to turn back and invest whatever treasure they found into turnip farming, somewhere preferably far, far away. But if they choose to proceed, they will have to climb through all 4 levels of the 55-room building, so they maybe can seize their chance to put an end to the horrors of the Obsidian Keep. The book's last 4 pages contain references to the magical items and factions presented in the book, as well as a spread detailing 16 retainers or replacement adventurers. You wouldn't want to let a Volgrain abduction stop your rating, right? This 72-page A5 staple-bound softcover with PDF can be pre-ordered for 27 euros. Looking good. Looking pretty good. Although 245 Trioxin is with us in chat, they just mentioned something that I also thought, and that is the price of shipping is pretty high on this. It's like 10 euros just to the UK. And they're in the UK, I thought. So I don't know. This might be something you keep your eyes peeled as far as just the PDF. And I don't believe this is available in PDF just yet. And I know for certain it is not on Drive-Thru RPG, but I do think this looked really good, and I have heard good things about the author and some previous adventures there too. So very nice. Very nice. Sweet. moving right along. Oh, I guess I should point out that Russell Higgins is also with us in chat. Hello, Russell. Good to see you. Another result of a successful Kickstarter has arrived, and it's Fiends and Foes for Swords and Wizardry Revised from Mythmere Games. Fiends and Foes adds over 300 monsters to the ones in the Swords and Wizardry rulebook, over 40 of which are brand new, written for this book. Others include monsters that were originally in monstrosities, but are now updated with morale numbers and corrected experience point values to bring them in line with Swords and Wizardry Revised. Encounter the bizarre plant animal Urtharians on their plane-shifting flamingos, the giant foul-mouthed fey cats known as Bullgrimmelkins. Foul-mouthed fey cats? Okay. Along with many old favorites from the previous Swords and Wizardry monstrosities, such as the Artificers of Yothri. Now, the physical book is not available just yet because this Kickstarter, I want to say, just wrapped up late last month. But the PDF is available. It clocks in at 128 pages. It's over at DriveThruRPG, and it's $11.99. That sounds like a pretty damn good deal, seeing that Swords and Wizardry, revised or not, is pretty traditional OSR. You could use that bestiary with just about any retro clone, I'm sure. Sweet. Very nice. Very nice. Let's talk about my final news piece, because now available in PDF for 5e D&D first and second edition Pathfinder OSR, as well as I believe they have like a non-specific system agnostic, is the GM's Miscellany Dungeon Backdrops 4. And here's what I know from Raging Swan Press. You're a game master, but you're busy. You want to write your own modules, but you just don't have the time, and you don't want to use commercial modules. You want to make your campaign your own. That's where the dungeon backdrop line comes in. Each dungeon backdrop presents a fully fleshed out and lovingly detailed self-contained dungeon ready for you to use as you see fit. Stock the dungeon with your own monsters and perhaps their treasure. Decide their backstory and you're good to go. Every dungeon backdrop is carefully designed to be easily inserted into almost any fantasy campaign. Dungeon backdrops, we describe the dungeon, you add the monsters, well, and the treasure. GM's Miscellany Dungeon Backdrops 4 comprises the following dungeons: Capable Druid of the Scorned Wood, Cursed Refuge of the Valley of Tears, Decaying Citadel of the Fated Warlock, Nightmare Lodge of the Insane Armiger, and Lost Cellar of the Nameless Mage. Maybe that's why he's lost, because he doesn't have a name. This 60-page PDF is available over at DriveThruRPG for $8.95. Once again, it comes in a multitude of various different flavors. Very nice. I have got to take a peek to see if Raging Swan is going to be at Gen Con, because I would love to reach out to them, because I want to take a peek at their adventures, because they have that like cool old school vibe to them. I don't know if they're any good, but I mean, Raging Swan has been around for quite a while now. And as you can see, their cartography is always smoking good. So there is that. All right, that is it for the news tonight. Of course, I was just talking about DriveThruRPG. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to swing on over to Drive-Thru RPG or Dungeon Masters Guild, Storytellers Vault, Wargame Vault, what have you, please stop by thegaminggang.com. First, click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do go a long way to keeping the gaminggang.com around. Yes. And right now, there is the sale pops up annually on the Any nominees. So nominees for the Any Awards are on sale. I think they usually take 20% off. So there is that. Of course, if you like this video, if you like the video, if you dig the channel, if you find thegaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, you can always swing on over to paypal.me/thegaminggang to make a small donation. Hell, you could buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Lips smacking good. Or am I supposed to do this? Would that be smacking my lip? Ah! You bastard, you slapped my lip. You smacked my lips. Son of a bitch. And big thank you to those out there who like to pop on over to paypal.me/thegaminggang and make not small donations, such as our good friends, the Madman, as well as Joshua Edwards as of late. Agile Monk is always popping on over there too. Very nice. Very nice. All righty. So as I mentioned, I wanted to make sure that I showed something that arrived from Steamforged Games. And it is the Ancient Forest edition of Monster Hunter World. For some reason, I thought it was like something jungle. Yes, this arrived. I kid you not, this box probably weighs 10 pounds. So I got a box that contained this. RuneScape Kingdoms, the role-playing game, as well as, now I showed you this yesterday, RuneScape Kingdoms Shadow of Elvarg, which is a board game. Now, the two board games all have minis. And I am taking a guess that Monster Hunter World probably has those like big miniatures, kind of like the big minis that they have with their series for 5e that I've shared a few with you over the past few months since Steamforged started sending them around. What is the series again? It is, where did I move them to? Oh, yeah, that's right. I got them over on the other side. Epic Encounters, that's it. Yes. So usually they'll have an Epic Encounters release that's got, say, like they had the Knolls. And then they have a monster-sized miniature that they also release at the same time. So I'm going to take a guess. There's at least one of these monsters in here. I'll show you the back. It looks like the monster minis are over here. But I'm taking a guess. There's at least one of them that's going to be on like a 100mm stand. It's pretty nice, pretty sweet. So as I mentioned, I've got practically enough stuff to do. A week devoted to Steamforged. So I might actually do that. Now, remember, I'm also going to be sharing my reviews of the Tales of the Valiant, not from the Valiant. I remember this. The Player's Guide as well as the Monster Vault this weekend. So stay tuned for that. Got a few more people popping on into chat. Let's see. We've got Lefter is creative. I believe first time visit here in chat for them. And Mark CMG Clover, good to see you. Thank you very much for popping back on in. Everybody make yourselves comfortable. Sly Blue Demon says, a Monster Hunter board game? Yeah, they kickstarted it. In fact, I think there's like 3 editions of it that all have different monsters. Yes, the Warwolf is joining us too. So tonight, I am going to kind of explore what's up with this sudden new wave of hatred for old D&D, as well as its creators and creatives, seemingly, and what might be driving it. We are going to discuss, but first, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
Look, ice cream still the top favorite. Try some and thrill to the ice cream taste. Yep, it's real good.
The favorite of young and old alike. The smooth, flavor-rich cream, heaped and overflowing, delicious, and refreshing.
Vote for me and we'll all drink Wilkins coffee.
But I don't like Wilkins.
Elect me and you'll learn to like Wilkins.
I say there are things better left unsolved.
Who knows what waits for us in nature's no man's land?
Impossible, unbelievable, fantastic. But I tell you, it could happen. It could happen. It could happen. It could happen.
Yes, it could happen. For various authorities believe that buried somewhere under the polar ice cap, in a state of suspended animation, are the awesome creatures, the leviathans that roamed the earth at the dawn of time. And under certain conditions, a nuclear explosion could free one from his icy tomb. Then, guided by instinct, the beast would come back to the caverns of the deepest Atlantic where it was spawned. An armored giant, wreaking his prehistoric fury on modern man and his puny machines. Cities would be terrorized by the cruel intruder from the past. Populations crazed and panicked with fear by its destructive force. Granite and steel would crumble. Soldiers and their weapons would be powerless before the onslaught of the beast. The beast. The beast. The beast from 20,000 fathoms.
Herald Square, 34th Street, Broadway. Every section of the city is guarded. No one knows where the monster will strike next.
Another one, Colonel?
No.
You know what the radioactive isotope is?
No, but if it can be loaded, I can fire it.
I'll load it. Just remember one thing. This is the only isotope of its kind this side of Oak Ridge, so you can't miss.
All right, Kevin R. Smith and I are going to go enjoy some of that lovely looking ice cream. It's like, I'm sorry, is that, are those like mashed potatoes on a cone? The hell is that? Nolan Inquisitor is with us tonight. Finally got that to roll off my tongue for once. All of a sudden it's like, hey, Jeff, it's not actually pronounced that way. Oops. All right, then. So, now little, those of you who are relatively new who are popping in, yes, every show we do a brief intermission and I throw out old movie trailers, and it's usually about 3 minutes in length. And one of the reasons why I do that is to give folks time to go, like, use the bathroom real quick before I jump into stuff. So, plus, I get a kick out of that stuff, too. All right, I think someone knew... it was Nolan Inquisitor. It was spot-on pronunciation. All righty, then. So tonight, I want to talk about the seemingly new wave of hatred aimed at old Dungeons and Dragons, and more specifically, its creators and others who were influential in the creation of Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm going to tell you right up front, my take on this is probably going to piss some people off, and you might be surprised it could turn out to be you. So I'm just saying, right? Because I'm asking, what's up with this? I'm not necessarily saying that it's unwarranted. So let's discuss. So there's a few things going on. There's some stuff that people always carry on about as of late. The creators of Dungeons and Dragons were racists. That orcs actually represent African Americans. That I've heard over the years that the half orcs are supposed to represent Mongolians. I'm not exactly sure where that came off from. So Mark is heading on off to watch the rest of the Cubs game. Last I looked, they were winning. But, that bullpen, you never know. You never know. So there's discussion. There's always discussion of that, but I've been hearing more about that as of late. I have also seen that people are carrying on about Gary Gygax being sexist and things along those lines. And then there was pushback. Oh gosh, now I can't remember his name. It was someone who had worked peripherally on D&D, saying, "Oh, they're lying," because it's all because of this history of D&D book that has come out, and there is some reference to what the authors and no doubt Wizards of the Coast, because I'm sure there's nothing that would go into that book that did not get cleared by Wizards of the Coast, that they feel is problematic and has been always problematic with Dungeons and Dragons. Kevin King is with us. Yes, thank you. Rob Kuntz. I don't know why I couldn't remember. W. Forge asks, is there a difference between prejudice and racist? I'd like to think so. I always believe there is. I always thought there's a difference. And it is possible that some of the creators were prejudiced. Maybe they were bigoted. I don't necessarily know if they were racist. And we're not going to dive into all of these specifics. Okay, I'm not here to address, oh, well, I had always heard this and I had always heard this. I'm just curious what's kind of behind it. Because we usually hear grumblings about this stuff. We've heard grumblings about this stuff for a long time. And I say it quite often. I get really tired of people who weren't around, they weren't alive, trying to tell me what things were like at a certain point in time. And it's sort of like, okay, so for one, you don't know the history of anything, because a vast majority of you have already pointed out If it happened before I was born, I don't care. It's not important. Yeah, I guess, the Revolution, American Civil War, World War I, World War II. Who gives a shit about that stuff, right? Because America's America. Always been America. But it irritates the shit out of me when people want to talk about, oh, well, it was this way, that way, this way. And it's like, you were born in 1999. How are you going to tell me what the world was like in 1984? And I'm not talking George Orwell's 1984 either. But I will say this, and something else that kind of bothers me with what's been going on is far too many people talking about, well, it was a different time. Things were more accepted back then, which isn't necessarily true. Bad behavior has always been bad behavior. Bad behavior hasn't been called out as often as it is now in the past. So things that were, well, we didn't use the word back in the day, like cringeworthy, just wasn't called out. There were plenty of times I was at work somewhere and somebody would say or do something at work that was like, what the fuck did you just say? Didn't actually say it out loud, but it was like, I can't believe you said that out loud. It's like, and then, nothing happened. Nowadays, it'd be like, you'd say something close. It'd be like, see ya, bye. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Make sure you stop by HR. Michael Hislop and Relighter Gamer are popping on in. Red Letter Gamer says, I just logged in to say, America! And hello. Yes, Chris Langren also points out, I love how people tell me what life was like before they were born. Yeah, I don't get it. Von Moore says a lot of bad behavior used to be legal, like slave ownership and segregation. Well, I would say those things were a lot worse than just bad behavior. So on one side we have, okay, let's point this out. The great majority of gamers out there, we're sort of in the middle, and we're sort of like, yeah, okay, Gary Gygax created Dungeons and Dragons. Yes. So did Dave Arneson together. Yes. There were other folks involved. Yes. And I don't really give a shit. They created a game. A lot of people enjoyed that game. I started off with that game. I moved on to other games. Fantastic. But the vast majority are like, yeah, okay, I know who Gary Gygax is. I've heard of Gary Gygax. But it's not like, oh my God. He made Tiamat a female dragon. Oh. It's like, the vast majority of us just are like, whatever. It's just, but what I'm finding is going on right now is there seems to be a real push, and I do believe it's being instrumented by folks who I don't want to say they work for Wizards of the Coast, but maybe we'll say there's some Wizards of the Coast sycophants who are kind of really trying to push this whole, Dungeons and Dragons was a real shithole of white supremacy and, like women bashing And it's like, what? It's like, what the hell are you talking about? And it's almost as if, as Kabuki Kid points out, Tiamat is a Mesopotamian god. Yes. Zetro's with us in chat, says, this is Lovecraft all over again. Not, I would say, certainly not to the same extent as H.P. Lovecraft. But I'll be the first to say that I had always had the impression that Gary Gygax was kind of a prick. I mean, I'm just being honest. I never met him. We saw him a couple of times at Gen Con. Never went and talked to him or anything. But I had heard through the grapevine from people who had played in like convention games with him or had talked to him a little bit that he was sort of kind of an asshole, which, that's fine. I think a lot of people out there have a really hard time distancing themselves from a creation and the creators, or the work and the author or artist or what have you. I mean, a lot of people very excited about that moon landing, 1969, brought to you by the Nazi scientists who were brought over to the United States in Operation Paperclip. Yes, Werner von Braun. So, I mean, it's, oh my gosh, it's fantastic, all that science. And then, of course, you have to take a look at, well, how was that science produced? So there are a lot of really great things in this world that were made by pretty shitty people. I mean, it's just a fact. And unfortunately, it seems as if, once again, I'm sure there's some folks out there are going to be like, it's the old man yelling at the clouds again. But it seems as if far, far too many people, and I'm not just saying young people, I'm saying people in general, don't understand context anymore. Not only trying to understand words in a sentence that you've never encountered before, I'm talking about historical context. So I was talking to my best friend, Elliot Miller, earlier today, and I had said, nowadays there are a lot of people who say that Abraham Lincoln was racist. And if you look at Abraham Lincoln through today's prism of Moors, yes, he would be. Because Abraham Lincoln did not feel that the white person and black person were equal. Many abolitionists did not feel that way. But they also believed that regardless of color, people were human beings and they shouldn't be enslaved by anyone else. But once again, you got to look at the context of the times. If you look at what Abraham Lincoln did and abolitionists believed, compared to the average person, even in the North, it's amazing how forward-thinking they were. Yet, you got people today who'd be like, they should tear all those Abraham Lincoln statues down. That's not how things work. So as far as the creators of D&D being, monsters, no, absolutely not. For Lighter Gamer says, tear down all statues. And I wouldn't argue that too much. Kabuki Kid says, yeah, Lovecraft is definitely a case of a pretty serious racist. Well, I would say some of the critiques, and it was kind of funny because, yes, the whole premise currently right now is the Gary Gygax was a sexist because of things he had said and things he had written. And Isn't it Maya Angelou? Did I pronounce her name correctly? I hope so. Didn't she say, when somebody tells you who they are, listen? He straight out sent a letter into to a gaming magazine saying he was sexist and that women didn't play role-playing games and women's brains were different and all these other stuff, all these other things. And I know on one side of the fence, people are saying, yeah, but everybody was like that. Angelou, thank you. Thank you, Kabuki Kid. A lot of people had very backward thinking back then. Something else that I don't know if a lot of people who are like railing on Gary Gygax may not have like looked at is he was a Jehovah's Witness. So you may want to look at some of their beliefs because the same people who are ripping them for being sexist are the same people who sit there and say, well, it's someone's religion. It's okay. It's their religion. It's like, well, which is it? But I think the reality is what's going on here is that there is a movement to make everything prior to Wizards of the Coast's acquisition of Dungeons and Dragons look like, it was just a free-for-all. In fact, the rebuttal of the D&D historian said something about, well, Dungeons and Dragons isn't just about middle-aged white guys in the Midwest. And it's sort of like, when was Dungeons and Dragons in the late 70s and into the 80s? Middle-aged people playing, because that wasn't it. It was kids. It was teenagers. It was high school kids like me at the time. It was college kids. It wasn't a bunch of middle-aged white guys hanging out in the Midwest playing. Those were the creators. It's kind of like, come on. It's like, okay, so Chris Lundgren says, against people accusing him of that, and he said more than that. He said, if I am that, then why did he have workers at TSR in leadership roles? Well, you can be sexist and not be a misogynist. Adam Pender is popping on in. Says Jehovah was looking the other way when Gary was in California. What do you mean? Yeah, I know. So Kevin R. Smith says, Dave Anderson was barely out of college in the early 70s. Gygax was still in his 30s in the early 70s. Yeah, so I mean, I thought that was kind of an asinine thing to say because something else that I don't think enough people who now feel that they are the custodians of our hobby, and they are self-appointed, of course. What they don't realize is that there was no geek chic in the 1970s and 80s. People weren't cool because, oh, look, you're a geek. Yeah, you're a nerd. Oh, boy, can we be friends? No, geeks got their asses kicked. Nerds got punched in the face. That's what happened. Oh, you play Dungeons and Dragons? Dork. You're a dork. So for some strange reason, I think there are some of these people who are like, oh, yeah, all these white guys, they kept me out of the hobby. And I've said it time and time again. I know people were gate-kept out of the hobby. I understand that. I'm not trying to say, oh, that did not happen, but it certainly did not happen anywhere near the scale that people who weren't even alive at the time would like you to think took place. So the funny thing is, I also think that there is a push to kind of like rehash some of this stuff that we've heard about for years. Like Gary Gygax in California hanging around with his kids doing blow with wannabe starlets in the hot tub, which, man, that would be bad for your health. Oof. All around. Those were stories that floated around long before any of these D&D, Gary Gygax biographies floated on out. Long before that. And it's just so bizarre to have all this focus on like the negativity of early D&D during the 50th anniversary of the game. And like I said, I kind of feel like some of this is being orchestrated by Wizards of the Coast. And that's fine. If they want to do that, that's fine. We've talked about, the new, not new edition. I know somebody in chat said, I'm not buying it. I forget who it was who had mentioned that. Justice McPherson and Smoking Pots are in chat with us. Zedro says they were proud of being a geek before it was trendy. Sorry, I'm not really interacting too much with chat at the moment because you know me, I'll go off on a tangent and we won't remember how we got there. But I also think part of the reason why Wizards of the Coast wants to focus on, for some reason, something just popped up on my screen. Got to get rid of it. A Windows message. I think Wizards of the Coast wants to kind of have a focus on that because, their hands aren't clean. They've had some sketchy characters working for them. And they don't want anybody like taking a peek at that. So I think that is one of the reasons why. And, as far as I understand, and I don't know for a fact because I have not seen it, this history of D&D that has a lot of grognards riled up just like mentions a couple of things in passing. And it doesn't, once again, I haven't read it. I'm sure somebody in chat has read it. If you can explain it, if you've seen it, you can tell me if I'm wrong. But it's my understanding that the sexism is mentioned, and it's not like Gary Gygax was sexist. It just talks about how, there are things that today would be considered problematic that were in these original rules that are in this book, and old D&D, original D&D, AD&D, basic expert, stuff like that, that there's, certain racial attitudes. Once again, I don't think the creators were racist. I don't think Dave Arneson ran a game at his house and had to wrap up early so he could go put his hood on to go get to the clan meeting. I don't foresee that. Minnesota's not that sort of state, really. But I'm not saying that they weren't prejudiced. I'm not saying they weren't bigoted. But I think far too many people read into things, or they look for problems where problems actually didn't exist in the first place. And we're talking 50 years ago. We're talking both gentlemen, and there's some other accusations. Wasn't Frank Metzer? Wasn't there some sort of scandal around him for some reason? For some reason, I thought I recall something popping up. Yes, I had mentioned this yesterday, as Sly Blue Demon points out. Gygax can't defend himself. No, and neither can Dave Arneson. There are quite a few people who cannot defend themselves, who are, accused of various different bad behavior. But once again, I mean, Gary Gygax said he was sexist. So, like I said, we'll take him at his word. Plus, if you ever read Dragon Magazine, which I remember reading Dragon when it would come out every month for about 2 years, and you had Gary's, wasn't it called Gary's Soapbox for some strange reason? I want to say that's what the title of it was. Or maybe I'm thinking comic books with Marvel, and it was Stan's Soapbox. Maybe that was what I'm thinking of. But I seem to recall that Gary Gygax kind of came across as sort of a get off my lawn kind of character. Because you got to remember, Gary Gygax came from wargaming. So did Dave Arneson. But Gary Gygax was still more of wargaming. That it was, in fact, like the first Gen Con, it was all war games. There was no D&D didn't exist. I believe it was the third Gen Con. Was that the one where Dave Arneson came from Minnesota and introduced Gary Gygax and some other folks? I forget Gary Gygax's best friend, the one who died early from a heart attack, who was actually like a big part of TSR. And TSR probably would have been quite different in that case. Brian Buckley is with us in chat, up on a soapbox. Thank you. I thought there was soapbox in it. But you got to realize it's been 47 years, maybe 46, probably about 45 years since I read an issue of Dragon Magazine. Kabuki Kid says, Gary had two personalities. The, hey, I'm a gamer like you guys guy, and the I'm running a company guy. Yes, and I heard that Gary Gygax was not an easy person to work with or work for. Plus, I've said it. If you follow the show, if you hang out from time to time, I've mentioned it in the past. I've always had the impression that both Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson each have a lot of blame to go with their falling out. And Gary was probably very difficult to work with, kind of a taskmaster. And Dave Arneson had his problems too. And of course, it was all money, is what really all boiled down to in the end, was greed. Let's see. Stephen from Roll for Combat's popping in. Have I been listening to the When We Were Wizards podcast about the history of TSR? It's excellent, and you should. I have not. There was an audiobook I listened to not too long ago that I can't remember the title of it. It was actually the history of TSR after Gary Gygax left. So it actually focused kind of more on the publishing arm, because that's kind of what it became. I also want to point out Mythic Mountain RPG shared a super chat, which kind of flashed by real quick. Says the reason for the hate is simple. They're establishing a distinct brand identity, similar to how Age of Sigmar sought to establish brand control. I do agree. I do agree with that. And once again, Wizards of the Coast wants to downplay the importance of the people who created the game and focus on their contribution, which I can see. But there's been a lot of poo-pooing on people who are dead and can't defend themselves, and it kind of pisses me off. Now, once again, I will point out there are some awesome things in this world that shitty people made. Don't forget that. But also, you know, some things got to sit there and, like, I assume most of you had grandparents at some point. And when you were younger and they were around, I'm sure some of their attitudes towards the modern world at that point in time seemed pretty archaic and maybe downright repugnant. I think that's kind of the case here. Is what we're looking at as far as the folks out there, the creatives with D&D that people are kind of ripping on. But like I said, it just, to me, it feels orchestrated. It really does. And I don't know if it's because it's the 50th anniversary and Gen Con's coming up and that book has come out, that I know that, like I said before, the Grognards are up in arms about what was written in that book. But I think it was Zetro who pointed out, yeah, you know what? It's like 2 paragraphs in the book. So it's like, oh, okay. So Stephen says, check it out. They interview everyone who's still alive from those days. It's quite the eye-opener. The thing that I try to keep in mind is, as far as TSR goes, this is what I've been told by people who work there, was whenever you talk the history of TSR, you got to keep in mind whoever you talk to who's still around, you need to know, were they Team Gary or not? Because if they got along with Gary Gygax, they let a lot of things slide. And if they didn't get along with Gary Gygax, they tend to be hyper critical. Chris Lundgren says, what pisses me off, they waited for all the old guard who are gone, except Kuntz. Well, it is the 50th anniversary. And I think that's why. Because, I mean, everybody's not gone. Tim Kask is still around. Who else? I mean, there's a few people, maybe not as many people from when OD&D came out, but there are still quite a few people around who were instrumental with TSR when AD&D came out. So Kabuki Kid says, loved my Nana, but yeah, she was a bit of a racist. One of my grandfathers, I think I've talked about this before, he was pretty racist. If a TV show had like a black main character, he would not watch it. The Jeffersons, oh no. Oh no. It's okay if you had a guest star. Yeah, it's fine. Sammy Davis Jr. is going to be on this show. Oh, all right, I like Sammy. The rest, I loved my grandfather, but, you know. Kevin R. Smith says, have any of those grognards actually read the book? Probably not. Because as Kevin points out, it is written by John Peterson. Isn't it Jason Tondro? Is he a co-author, or doesn't he have an additional writing credit? Yes, John Peterson, who doesn't have any grudges against the original creators. No, and John Peterson wrote the far too detailed for my brains to comprehend history of role-playing. Isn't it called Gaming the World? Got to remember, folks, I have so many titles of things that float through my head. not only gaming related, other things too. I'll give you a great example. A lot of times you can name a movie, maybe not from the last 10 years, but you can name a movie and I probably have a relatively good idea of what the plot was, even if I hadn't seen it. So yes, Stephen from Roll for Combat says, gaming the world was too detailed. I agree. I completely agree. Anyway, so just to wrap up, I do want to point out, I am not here to defend anybody and their asinine mindsets, bad behavior, anything like that. I am not letting these people off the hook. So I am not going to sit there and give an excuse like, oh, well, back then everybody did that. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, if we go far enough back then, people also owned other people in certain parts of this country. And if we go a little further back, they owned them in all parts of this country. That doesn't make it right. It still makes it reprehensible. But I also take things in the context of the times as well. So, like I said, I think some of the outrage from both sides is kind of falsely generated, and that Wizards of the Coast doesn't want people focusing on the follies and the bad actors that they have had in their employ working on Dungeons and Dragons over the years. So let's talk about how shitty the TSR folks were. And then maybe people won't come looking through our dirty laundry. Kind of get that. All right. So we love Tabletop Role-Playing Games has been hanging out with us. Relighter Gamer says, I think back in our grandfather's day, if you didn't make racist remarks or agreements with them, you'd be seen in a bad light, just like the opposite today. All depending on where you were. Really. And all depending on who you were. So as an example, like Irish Americans and African Americans back at a certain point following the American Civil War did not get along well, which strangely enough, they should have, because there were a lot of folks who wouldn't want to hire either of them. But they did not get along well because they competed for the same employment opportunities in many ways. So that's kind of along those lines there. We love Tabletop Role-Playing Games says people complain because that's all they have to offer. Well, that's the internet now. That's all it is. People just complaining. Like, I'm sure folks tuned in tonight thinking that I was just going to just be railing on Wizards of the Coast. Those sons of bitches. Our Lord Gary Gygax, how could you say these things about him? No, absolutely not. It's like, no. Cracks the Bolt says 50 years from now, we'll all be judged for what we do now by the morals of men. Yes, that's how things work. But unfortunately, over the last, it's gotten worse in the last 15 years. More and more people can't look at things in the context of the times, because once again, they know nothing about those times. That's kind of a problem. We love Tabletop Role-Playing Games. Also says the people attacking dead people should remember this quote: great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. I've never heard that before. I like that. That is pretty cool. Pretty cool. Flaming Heron says people have to have some outrage. See, that's something I don't understand either. I don't understand. Now, I can be critical. You know that. I mean, I do, like, if I do a review of something and I'm not overly fond of, I don't savage it. Just because what's the point? I mean, come on. There's plenty of people out there who get their rocks off, doing reviews saying how shitty stuff is. Hey, I talked about somebody earlier. I'm joking. I don't know him from Adam. Kabuki Kid says, oh, so yeah, Chris is talking about Buddy. Hello, Buddy, the parrot. And Kabuki Kid says they're getting ready to take their parrot out for a while. Rogue Thinker says, well, there are reasons for disagreements with modern Hasbro TSR. I tried never to judge the past by modern standards. And yeah, I mean, I think part of the pushback with the Grognards is that it's their frustration at where Dungeons and Dragons is now. And the direction it has moved into. And I mean, even I've talked about how looking at the preview artwork for this not new edition, it's sort of like, what is the theme of this game? That we all get along and hold hands together? What is this, one big SimCity role-playing game? What's going on here? Oh, sorry. Buddy is a cockatiel. I thought he was a parrot. Sorry, Buddy. I'm racist, man. Birds all look the same. They all look the same to me. Even though I've never seen the bird. All right. Anyway, so you might be disappointed by my take on this. Maybe you're like, yeah, yeah, that's kind of how normal people think. Cracks and Bolt says, I don't understand the anger from so many people who don't play modern Dungeons and Dragons anyway. I know, I get it. I think that is just so bizarre. I don't know. Just like, you would think I'd sit here and like complain about GURPS all the time. No, I don't. Anywho, so tomorrow night, I am going to talk about, well, I guess I'll say I am going to answer the question, is Gen Con the best gaming convention? I'm sure many of you will already know my answer to that. But still, that's tomorrow's topic. Like I said before, it's not easy to come up with topics. Even though it's 3 nights a week, it is not easy to come up with stuff. All righty. So, if you're watching live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, a bigger thank you. Because not only are you keeping me company, you're keeping each other company as well. But of course, I know a lot of folks out there, they don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you very much for taking time out to watch any of the nearly 2,000 videos here on the Gaming Gang channel. Of course, a big thank you to our sponsor this week. Yes, Dark Star Adventures and the Cult of the Cavern Crickets Kickstarter. I'll be sharing news about that again tomorrow. Of course, if you like the video, give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It will not only let you know. Wait a second. It didn't pop up. What's going on? There it is. Oh, I know. I have an extra thing from, yeah. Little inside baseball there. It's like, oh, I got an extra scene in there I need to get rid of. From what I was doing my Kickstarter preview for Hell of a Town. Anyway, be sure to ring that bell because it'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Why did I just say? Oh, because I see it. I glanced at the time. That must be it. It'll also let you know when I share other videos, such as my unboxing and first look at Mothership First Edition Core Box from Tuesday Night Games and Exalted Funeral. Sweets. All right, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is in your neck of the woods. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and as always, I certainly hope each and every one of you gets to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.